We are waiting for another counselor to have a quorum, so we're going to give it 5 minutes.
Counselor Fox, can you hear me?
Yes, I was just texting about that. Good.
Excellent. Well, we had just a little bit of technical difficulty and, so we're beyond that now. Tammy, are we waiting for anybody else?
Mayor, you have a quorum with 3.
I will call the Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order for February 14th at 6:04. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed, so please make sure that your microphones are turned on and that you speak clearly so all can hear. I'll also remind you that in this, we're not counselors, we are directors. We have would you please do roll call?
Yes, so we have Director Blaine and Director Wells are absent. I have Director Fox joining by Zoom, and then Director Engelbretson and Director Lehman and Mayor Bell. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Sammy. Is there anyone signed up for citizen testimony? Our business items are the audit and annual finance report through June 30th of 2022. And that will be a staff report by Ann Heath. Ms. Heath, are you ready to do that?
I am. Good evening. The Urban Renewal Agency is a component unit of the city of Coburg. It was started in 2001 and with the goals of providing adequate facilities and water quality. It's a separate entity than the city. It collects its own tax base. And the primary purpose of the funds in the Urban Renewal Agency is to support the sewer utility. So as far as the financial update, the URA has very little business. In fact, there hasn't even been a transaction yet this year other than to record property taxes and bank interest received. Cash on hand at December 31st was $445,280. The taxes received so far this year are $407,379. There is a budgeted transfer in the amount of $375,000 to the city. That's normally made at the end of the fiscal year. And that is the complete financial report for the URA. That really does sum up all of the financial business as of December 31st. There's just not been any other than reconciling the bank and adding in the revenues and a few bank fees.
And then we did have to pay for the auditor, right?
Yeah, we haven't paid that yet,
We
though.
haven't paid
So
that
as
yet. Okay. Are there any questions from directors? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion and a second.
I move that the Coburg Urban Renewal Agency Board accept the annual financial report as presented.
I can't hear Ann.
Sorry.
That was not on the agenda. Yeah, she was calling for the audit.
Oh,
Okay,
yes, what I provided you in the packet was also
the financial.
The audit report is
Ann? Is your mic off?
I think it's going in and out. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Because I've turned it on twice now.
Can you-
So the only activity again in the URA is to receive tax funds and to pay some administrative costs, very small administrative costs, and then make a once-a-year transfer to the city. Taxes received in the last year were $384,000. The only expenses to the urban renewal district outside of the transfer to the city were $12,000 in administrative costs. I think that equaled about 5 checks out. And so the audit is very simple. It's also included in the city audit. So when you look at the city audit, all of the information for the URA is also included in that audit. And I would be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the URA. It's a pretty simple financial statement. And limited, very, very limited transactions.
So that's on page 32, I believe, of our report. Supplementary information. Am I correct on that? That's
32.
the schedule of revenues and expenditures.
So that's what gets sent to the state, so simplified, telling the state exactly what are the revenues, expenditures, and if there were any accounting misstatements or errors, they let them know that, or any non-compliance. And in that, in section B, number 1, it says there are 0 deficiencies.
Looks
in the
like a
audit.
clean audit.
Very clean. There's like multiple copies here. I don't know. I have the same thing. It's over and over again.
Yeah, it's the agenda for the Urban Renewal Agency is what I'm looking at in that packet. So we have the annual audit.
I don't know. It's,
You have too many papers, I assume.
I brought my copy.
So what I was looking at was page 32
32.
in that packet.
I apologize.
You've got a lot of papers there.
So like I said, the taxes and assessments were $384,000. With the investment revenue is just bank interest.
Okay,
Very little $12,071 in expenses and a $375,000 transfer to the city. There's a net change in fund balance of a negative $1,099. Generally, we leave enough, only enough in the URA to make sure that if administrative costs came up, that they would be able to be covered. So that leaves a fund balance of $36,504.
Are there any questions on the audit and annual financial report through June 30th of 22?
Question, are we going to have a motion for accepting the annual financial report and the audit? Are we moving to approve both or just the audit or just the financial?
You
report?
just you just approve the audit. The financial report is an information only.
So Counselor Lehman, would you like to make that motion again?
Strike the annual financial report and replace it with the audit.
It is known as the annual financial report. So if you if you look at the front page
So it
of
is
the
the-
actual, it's the annual Urban Renewal Agency Annual Financial Report ending on 6/30/2022.
It is the audit and the annual financial report. So one motion.
One
should
motion,
be
and you should
acceptable.
have a scripted motion in your staff
It
report,
just doesn't say the word audit. in the motion.
right?
Are we? Word audit in the motion?
You don't need to.
I move that the Coburg Urban Renewal Agency Board accept the annual financial report as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Counselor Ingebrigtsen. All those in favor? Raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the audit, the motion passes, and that's 4-0. Thank you all very much. And now the finance update. Did you want to give us an update on that, Ann? or-
That's what I did in the
You did.
beginning. I'm sorry. I exchanged these two around. I apologize for
Well,
that.
obviously, I was a little confused on that also, so thank you, Sammy, for getting us
Yes.
back on track
I
there.
brought my own papers down, and so I was following the stack of my papers, so
Sure.
I apologize for that.
Absolutely. Understand, there's a lot of paper, and we do not need a second motion on that. Okay. All right, so there we go, information only. So we are finished then. The upcoming agenda items will be May 30th. We will be having a budget meeting, and June 13th will be the Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
And the minutes, you're gonna approve those minutes. Item number 3 on the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I missed that. See, I don't have a lot of papers, but I missed that too. So I would, if you've had a chance to take a look at the June 14th, 2022 Urban Renewal Agency minutes, they're in your packet. And I will entertain a motion on those.
You're asking for a motion on the consent.
I move that we approve the minutes as presented for the urban renewal minutes of June 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. A motion by Counselor Fox and a second by Counselor Lehman, Director Fox and Director Lehman, to approve the minutes as presented from the 2022, June 14th, 2022 Urban Renewal Agency. All those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing none, That passes unanimously 4-0. Now you've all heard about when the next meetings are. And at this point, let's see, it is 6:16. I close the Valentine's Day, Tuesday, February 14th meeting of the Coburg Urban Renewal Agency. All right, does anybody need like a 2-second break before we start council meeting? Here, I did bring y'all some little Valentine's chocolates on the chair, so Commissioner Marshall, you'll have to move up because I don't think I put them all the way back there. And there are more if someone did not get them. All right. So I will call the city council meeting to order at 6:16. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
Stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So tonight, a quorum is 3. Correct? So Sammy, would you call roll for us, please?
Yes, we have Counselor Blaine and Counselor Wells who are absent. We have Counselor Engelbretson, Counselor Fox joining by Zoom, and Counselor Lehman present, as well as Mayor Bell. There is a quorum.
Thank you. Under mayor's comments, I see that we have liaison appointments listed. I'm not going to do those tonight. We had put those on our work plan to be done in March. I've heard from most counselors, and I very much appreciate you being so timely and getting me the information of your preferences. I haven't heard from everybody, so I want to get that done before I make those announcements, and so that will be in March, and that's pending input. Don't really have anything else to comment on except to say thank you all for a really great retreat. I think we did some good work. I was very pleased with it. I think we came out with some good schedules to address some of the things that are burning in the city. And well, hopefully not burning, but some items, some important items. So that's, I think, all I have for comments at this point. We'll do an agenda review. Oh, I need to back up a minute. I do have one more comment. In your red folder, you will find the resignation letter, a formal resignation letter from our city administrator. And that would be, she has put in writing her resignation, which allows us to move forward with recruitment. And her last day at this point for the letter is August 31st of 2023. So thank you very much, Anne, for giving us a long lead time, for verbally telling us what to expect, but also for providing us with a written letter. And that's really, it's hard. Change is hard. I don't like change any better than anybody else, but we do celebrate that Anne has other things to do in her life, just being our city administrator. So thank you. So now we have agenda review. Sammy, are there any proposed changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mayor. We do have in your red folder. You guys will see an IGA for recruitment of a city administrator from Lane Council of Government. And if you notice on the header of that, it shows where it's going to go into the agenda under agenda item 5.1, page 116. And Anne will also be doing a presentation this later in the agenda with the quarterly financial report. And it's just a copy of those PowerPoint. You guys always ask for the numbers after the meeting, so we gave it to you up front.
You're just getting ahead of us tonight, huh? Okay, thank you very much. Citizen testimony. So Sammy, is there anyone signed up to provide citizen testimony?
Mayor, I don't have anybody signed up or joining by Zoom for testimony tonight.
All right. You? And now I'm with you. I have too many papers and I can't keep track of where I am. But I'll do my best. So we're down to our consent agenda. And in the consent agenda, and these do not have to be voted on, or a motion does not need to be made. So in the consent agenda, we have a Heritage Committee appointment for Ronald Spores. And then we have the minutes from January 10th, 2023, the council meeting, and the minutes of January 24th, 2023, which was our work session. Does anyone have any changes to those?
I have a question.
Yes.
On the-
Fox.
On the January 24th meeting, it says Coburg City Council meeting. Should it say a work session?
Which page are you on? Can you tell me?
Page 11,
Page 11.
item 3.
I missed that. Thank you very much. So we will make that change. Or anything else? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the change to page 11 from meeting to work session.
I move to accept the consent agenda with the change, the clarifying that the January 24th meeting was a city council work session as opposed to a meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. So that was a motion by Counselor Engelbrechtson and a second by Counselor Lehman. All those in favor, say aye.
I
Raise your hand.
Aye.
On Zoom, thank you. And any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 3-0. And with the council's recommendation, I officially appoint Ronald Spores to the Heritage Committee to fill the remainder of the term that expires March of 2024. And his resume is in our packet, and I'm sure you've all taken a look at that. So we do have a couple of special guests tonight. We have Park and Tree Committee Chair, Ms. Mosier. Would you like to come up to the microphone so we can all hear you and applaud when you're finished?
No need for applause. It's nice to be here, Honorable Mayor Barrow and council members. And I believe that you have received a printed copy of the Park and Tree Committee's comments for the past year, so I won't go over and repeat that again. But maybe one thing you didn't have in it were some numbers. And so I just like to point out that we had 10 very faithful volunteers this year that put in 100+ hours of work in the park. Some of those were committee members and some of them were just community members that aren't on a committee. So we were grateful for that. And may I just put a plug in and say, if you have neighbors or friends that you know like to stick their fingers in the dirt and come out and help us, that would be great. We do have a good time. And when we leave, the parks look a little better. We just finished a work party the other day over at Norma Pfeiffer and did some weeding and spread some bark and I think it looks better. That kind of brings me up to another topic. Someone mentioned, what would I like council to do? And everybody's always looking for money. We're very excited though to be working on Pavilion Park this year with the grant money that came in. So that will take a lot of the committee's time this year. But also kind of sitting on the back burner has been the Veterans Memorial. So we have a design for that. We're waiting for time with the engineers to be able to map out what we want to do. So it looks like at this point we have enough money to cover maybe the engineering of it, but we're going to need funds to actually do the work. And so kind of give you a idea of what that will look like. It'll enlarge the area that's there around the flagpole now, as you see it in Norma Pfeiffer, clean up that. And as you can tell, the rose bushes, they've either died or they've gone back to their original rootstock. And so the plan is to enlarge that circle, divide it into fifths, and then plant roses in those 5 sections that would reflect the different branches of the military. And so it will be wheelchair accessible. There will probably be a decorative rock around the outside of it, between that and the grassy area. So I think it'll make it look so much more appealing. And we've had a bench that you may have noticed that's sitting out there that was donated. And so I think it'll be more of a place that people will want to go and sit. And hopefully honor the veterans that have served in our state. So any questions that I can answer from council members?
I'm not a council member.
Or mayor, excuse me.
Do you have an estimate on the cost?
For the
to
memorial?
the refurbishing?
No, I really don't until we get an engineering plan to see, because there'll be a hardscape around there for a wheelchair. And then the purchase of the roses, which, you know, really that won't be that much. So most of it's going to be in the engineering fees and in the concrete that's going to go around there. So. Okay. Any other, that doesn't really answer your question, but maybe
No,
gives you a
but it
little
gives
idea.
us an idea.
So,
So the engine, so Tom has drawn up what he thinks it would look like, and that y'all on the committee have approved.
right.
But now we have to get the engineer to, how does that work? Can you help me understand?
Sure, once they have a concept on paper, then we will have the engineer meet with them. I believe the engineer we couldn't get that kind of design up until this spring because they were booked out. So I believe once they do the conceptual and final design for the Pavilion Plaza, then they would take on the memorial. And so they will meet and then come back with a final design, which can be approved through the park committee, and then move forward either to apply. So I just did see a grant the other day. I think I forwarded Brian for Veteran Memorial Parks. So so we'll take a look at that.
Wonderful. Anne's really good at finding grant money. So, yes.
Lemon.
Just approximately, what's the size of the concrete surface?
I was trying to remember how big that circle is. Brian, do you remember? I don't remember how big the circle is, but it's the interior circle, not the exterior circle. So the exterior one will be, I think, a decorative rock type. The interior circle. So it's not huge, but it needs to be large enough that you can get a wheelchair around in there. So does that help any? Okay.
So it's pretty much around the flagpole area would be.
Yeah, you
hard
can see how it's
surface.
expanded now, and I was trying to remember if it's 16 feet from one side to the other. It's kind of what runs through my bill, but don't
Right.
stick to that. I can't remember, and I didn't look at the design before I came tonight, but so that gives you kind of an idea. So any other questions? So,
That is a beautiful memorial. I just will tell you that I have sent friends and family when all of the flags are up honoring all of the different branches of service. That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So
and I think what we're trying to do is put a medallion down in each section, so it'll indicate the different branches, this one's this, and I know that Tom and Lana, who are on the committee, have done some work on the type of roses to put down. And I think they will match quite nicely with the branches. So,
now there's, I think it's in Aurora. No, it's not quite Aurora, but the Heirloom Rose Company. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have absolutely spectacular native roses. So they do their own roots. I can send you some
okay,
information on
that'd be
that.
great.
Yeah, they don't go, they can die back and they'll come up the same, and because they're not grafted.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah,
Don't
they're
have to be
really
quite as
beautiful
careful.
roses.
So, all right.
Counselor Fox
Can I
has a
ask you a
question.
Counselor
I
Fox?
have to figure out how to ask a question on Zoom.
Well, usually I should be watching you.
So I just, with all the talk about the engineering and stuff, any chance that we could have a conceptual budget before we go into budgeting in May?
We probably could get a conceptual budget. I don't think it will take, it's not like the Pavilion Plaza. I don't think it's gonna take that much work.
It's a small request.
Yeah. So, well, yes. We'll see what we can do there.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
It's
you.
always nice to come and speak to council.
Well, and the parks look absolutely fantastic.
So, well,
And
make
just
sure you
start-
tell Brian that too.
Well,
so.
I do tell Brian that, but I also know that the committee members really work hard, and the
So,
community members, and it is very much appreciated in those.
well, thank you.
Well, we have another special guest who isn't here. Oh, he is here. He snuck in. You were sitting back there. I didn't even see you. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it does. apparently. He's so quiet, and he was back there with his dark shirt jacket on. I thought he was one of the crew. Sorry. Okay, Planning Commissioner Chair Bell.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Bell, Chair of the Planning Commission. It's my privilege to provide you with a short, brief report from the Planning Commission. Basically 2 items, and there is no quiz or test. First, the Planning Commission did adopt the same commission goals as we had for 2022. They center around participating in trainings on land use in Oregon, enhancing communication with city staff, city council, and other committees, and to gain information on a city annual budget and what the city council priorities are. Those goals worked well last year. They're still in process, so it seemed easy to re-adopt them and continue work on them. I myself have discovered an online training website by the state of Oregon for land use planning commissions. And I've even looked at it. And we'll encourage members of the commission to do the same. Second area that I wanted to report is on the more recent events and news of the planning commission. We had a departure. Valen Wells and gave us a vacancy, and we've already started working on filling that vacancy as soon as possible. We have finished the recent hearings on the Weikert subdivision, which took place both in December and also January of 2023. And I also wanted to point out to the city council that in all the meetings I've attended so far, which is only 3 or 4, one topic seems to always repetitively come up, and that is, how do we deal with narrow legacy streets from the 1800s? How do we deal with traffic that is continuing to slowly grow? Often with not so much with residents of the town, but people using the streets through town to get to somewhere else. And that always pops its head into our meetings. Just wanted to make you aware of that. I'll at this point entertain any questions from the council. Yeah.
Councilor Lyman.
I seem to recall that there were 2 recommendations from planning commission to the council for consideration. Do you recall what those were in your minutes, I believe, or?
Off the top of my head, I do not recall what those are.
Was one of them having to do with Macy and the intersection in the corner?
That was a request for further consideration, not a decision or anything, but just more of a raising the hand of concern about the issue of some of the roads that were cut through by the railroad, I think in the 1880s. And when the land that the railroad abandoned in the 1950s, the city elected to not necessarily purchase that land, but to let it go to private property bidders. In retrospect, some of those properties would have been nice to hold on to, but that's water under the bridge and too late to deal with.
Was the other having to do with the transportation plan or the traffic study before the developer gets final approval for?
As far as I remember, for the Weikert subdivision, all the traffic requirements had been met and it was approved. So there was no lingering specific to that development issue. There was instead concern about future growth of traffic at that turn from North Coburg and into Willamette.
I believe I believe what they're talking about is the traffic coming out of Weikart and coming on Macy and then coming out on North Willamette to hit Van Dyne.
Van Dyne, yeah.
And
The
so I
intersection
think the
of-
concern was asking the council to consider looking at that intersection as a priority. You can't really put fixing that intersection on to the developer. They have a transportation plan that does not report that was going to put undue pressure on that intersection. But there is a good reason to believe that people that live anywhere in the subdivision, whether it's phase 1 or phase 2, and they are taking their children to school, are going to go that way. And so there's a concern for people coming out that way. That's partially why they're not back there anymore, did the different designs for the streets to include some safe routes to school ideas. But there's also a concern about when cars are pulling out of North Willamette into the line of traffic at Van Dyne. The mayor did start a transportation discussion group. This, and we met last week, and this topic absolutely did come up. They, right now where we're at with that is we listed the topics, we're prioritizing them. And then they will be coming back with information for the council to consider of how the committee will move forward.
So what will be the role of the council in this? Are we making a decision on the design?
I think what you would probably do is, at this point, would be to give staff direction to look at that intersection. And do some research. I think the challenge with that intersection is it's a county-owned road. So we're going to have to work with the county to address it. And so it's not simply, you can't just give staff direction to fix the intersection or to go forward to find a way to fix the intersection because it's not our road. And so we will have to bring in our partners on
I'm
that
still just
discussion.
trying to clarify what the council's role is going to be. Is it in any shape a decision-making body on this plan, or is it just giving us information?
So may I ask a question, clarifying question? When does council, and I think this ties into Councilor Lehman, when does council get a report on community feedback on the options for?
Oh, okay. I think it's attached to my report today.
Okay,
As far as community feedback, but I believe that is in my city administrator's report. But as far as what council's role will be in solving that issue, I believe that the transportation committee will bring information to the council on what they deem as priorities, and the council will give direction as to where we were going, where you would like to see us go with that.
that answer your question. Councilor Fox, any questions from you?
No, not currently.
Okay. All right.
That concludes my exciting presentation.
Well, thank you, Commissioner
you.
Bell, and thanks to the Planning Commission for all of the work that they do. It's not necessarily always easy. Okay, our next agenda item is ordinances and resolution. And we have resolution 2023-02. A resolution authorizing a grant proposal to the Regional Fiber Consortium for extending the fiber line to the sewer plant and North Coburg Road. So there's staff report by Ms. Heath.
Yeah, so Coburg belongs to the Fiber Consortium, and that makes funding available for grants we can apply. And so this year we actually want to apply. I've already submitted. This hasn't even been looked at. It hasn't been considered. It won't be considered until the 23rd of February. So if the council were to vote no on this, we can withdraw our application, but there was a deadline to submit it. So our application asks for funding to put in a high-speed service off of the end of Industrial Way and over to the sewer plant. Currently, the sewer plant is very limited in their connection to the city as a whole. They can't work at their desks out there and hit the city network. They have to work here unless they're on LogMeIn. Is that correct? There's limitations in remote accessing to the plant. So this kind of connection could help Brian to be able to deal with things at home rather than have to come in the middle of the night or monitoring services. And so it would really enhance the way that they are able to interact within the network and high-speed fiber. Additionally, after hooking up the sewer plant, they will go ahead and run the line out to North Coburg Road. where that will expand, where that can go in the area out to the either south on North Coburg Road, so connecting along there. This is an application submitted to the Fiber Consortium for this project. The city does have a match in this. It's a limited match of, I believe it's
Less than $3,000.
$2,647.
Thank you. Questions? Council?
I made a note in that it said that if awarded, the grant funds would need to be used quickly. Do we have a contractor or someone lined up that is available to do
That would be DFN.
They have all of the equipment and are doing. the
They're
boards now.
currently, laying in their fiber line right now.
So if I'm reading these maps correctly, and that's not necessarily my strong suit, it goes out the end of Industrial Way and then through Trails End Park. So, and that's not going to be too disruptive to the park, I assume. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, so currently, there is a utility easement that goes through Trails End Park. And it, what utilities are in there are all sewer related. So the main line that comes from town that goes out to the treatment facility goes out that route. So they'll just be within that utility easement.
Okay. And then so it goes out Trails End Park, and then I assume it goes sort of angles west.
Yep, so
along
it'll go
and
out
go
to
directly.
the city property line, and then turn and go west to the current treatment plant and the operations center.
Well, good, I did read the maps fairly well.
Yes, you did.
Counselor Lehman.
Yeah, I support the fiber optics coming into Coburg, but I was just interested, we have Spectrum in parts of Coburg also, and they're delivering 1,000 megabytes of internet service. How are the two similar or different? Are they cross paths or?
I don't think you can answer that question.
I do know that they are mostly above ground, so they're all aerial. So DFN is putting underground in most of those locations. So when there's not a power pole that they can get permitted for, they're going underground.
Ours just got hooked up underground. And I was curious how.
That Spectrum. So in some of the newer older neighborhoods, or the older newer neighborhoods, I'm not sure which to say, that service is underground. I think we have to sort of work with DFN and do our comparison with Spectrum. In some of the newer neighborhoods, there was no cable there. There was no fiber optic laid when those new neighborhoods were built. So I think that this is addressing the need, and I believe there are some dark spots yet within the city that don't have anything. So we're working on that too.
Yeah, currently we use CenturyLink for the internet out there. It is extremely slow and very cumbersome. Right now, we're having difficulties this last week, especially trying to even work out there. We're having to come up to City Hall and work up here mostly.
Kind of a time suck.
Yes, it is.
It's good for the city also to have some competitive services.
That encourages competitive prices.
Right. So right now we have CenturyLink, Charter, and we have Spectrum. And that's it, I believe, within the city. Oh, Starlink, yes.
Yeah.
And so this would give us another option and hopefully as Ann says, it makes more competitive. We'll see. Let's see. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion and a second.
To accept a resolution authorizing grant proposal to the Regional Fiber Consortium for extending fiber line to the sewer plant and North Coburg Road.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
I,
Any opposed? Passes 3-0. And that motion was by Counselor Lehman with a second by Counselor Fox. Now we have the audit and annual finance report through, not to be confused with the URA report, but this is through June 30th of 2022. I believe that Ms. Heath will be giving us a staff report on that.
Yes, so the city council in a forward meeting gave the direction that the audit would be presented to the Finance Audit Committee. And so at their last meeting, the auditor was there to present the report. And the audit committee asked questions, received answers, and made the recommendation that the council accept the audit as presented. The audit is in the packets and I can go over the audit of any questions that you might have. Two of the counselors that are here tonight were actually in that meeting. So they're very familiar with the audit and I don't know if they have anything that they would like to share about that meeting. But I know that in that meeting, the auditor did share that the city is in good. There was no concerns with the audit and that we're doing a good job at the city. It's a large audit, so I don't know if you have specific questions about it that you would like to ask.
So Counselor Engelbretson, you were at that meeting,
yes,
correct? And
Yes.
Counselor Fox, is there anything, or Counselor Fox, Counselor Lehman, I'm so sorry. Anything that either of you would like to share?
I could just.
Yeah.
Sorry. Councilor Fox has a question.
Counselor
Maybe.
Fox, do you have a question?
Yes, I was gonna send this off as an email to the finance committee, but I'll just ask, why do we not get an internal control opinion from the auditors?
Page,
It's on page 116. It's the very last statement.
page 1 of the packet. Which,
What, 116?
No, I'm on page 31.
31 of your packet is the opinion letter of the auditor.
Okay, never mind.
So that's the report on the audit of the financial statements.
Yeah.
Opinions, basis of opinions, responsibilities.
So in the second paragraph under opinions, where it starts with in our opinion, that is the opinion of the auditor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Hutchinson.
Oh, yeah, well, thanks for the it is a good question. I think they do talk a little bit more, maybe toward the end somewhere about what they do as far as reviewing internal controls. It's kind of stock language, just, yeah, I think the main point is, it was nice of this auditor to put their opinion right at the beginning of their letter. That's the only part of the letter there, right at the, this is page 31 of the packet. And it's the independent auditor's report, and it's the letter to the honorable mayor and city council. And you know, those first two paragraphs are their opinion. If they didn't have a favorable opinion, it would say that in that second paragraph there. So they are saying that we passed the audit, basically, in that second. That's what that second paragraph is saying.
Mr. Lehman.
Not that it reflects on the audit, but there did come up discussion about the ending fund balances, and for this budget, we were going to have a review or a look at the last 5 years of the ending fund balance. You recall that conversation then?
Yes, you asked for a 5-year review of ending fund balances at budget time. We normally give the 3 years prior in the audit, in the budgets document. So, but we can certainly expand that to a document that shows the ending fund balances for 5 years.
So are we asking for a retrospective? So 5 years past and 5 years future? Is that what I'm hearing, or?
We were looking mostly at what the trend has been in the last 5 years.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then projecting forward as we usually do.
We project out 5 years.
Any other questions? Counselor Fox, am I missing you, or do you have a question?
No, not currently.
Okay. All right. Well, with no questions, I will entertain a motion and a second to accept the audit as presented.
I move that we accept the audit of the city of Coburg for the year ended June 30th, 2022. As
Second.
presented.
So that was a motion by Counselor Engelbrechtson and a second by Counselor Fox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Was that an opposed, Counselor Fox?
No, that was in favor.
Okay, all right, sorry. I just saw your hand and I thought, oh, I missed something. All right, so the outcome on that is 3-0. So the motion passes. Thank you. In your red folder, there is a intergovernmental agreement with Lane Council of Governments for recruitment of city administrator. As you recall, in our retreat, we compared the services and costs associated with the various, with 3 different recruiting services, and it was the direction or the thought process at that point to look at the Lane Council of Governments and their, I never quite get it's LPS, no.
LGPS.
LGPS, I left out a G.
Local government personnel
Ser-
service.
Yes, personnel services. So we'd like to take a look at that IGA. We did notice one thing as looking at it, and I think it was sort of a rush for them to put together. They do talk about the cost of this recruitment being inclusive at $8,500, but on on the agreement, and number 3, it also refers us to Exhibit A, which then is doing a breakdown of every little bit and piece, their fee schedule. So, as you make a motion, you can either make a motion to make it just, that it has to be inclusive of the $8,500, or you can allow your city administrator and mayor to go back to Lane Council of Governments and LGPS and to address this inconsistency. So I would just point that out for your review.
You could, I mean, you can approve it with the caveat that we would ask for these changes and sign it once the changes were made.
Rather than bringing it back to you
Right.
again at next council meeting.
And that change would be in paragraph 3. There would be language added to referring to the not to exceed $8,500 rather than pointing it to Exhibit A.
Which we believe is an error on their part, but we do need to clarify that.
I think that would be prudent.
So do we have direction from council? We don't need a motion on this, do we, Sammy?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, you guys are approving the contract,
Okay,
or you're approving an amended contract, or you're asking for a change to happen in the contract to come back in March.
I have a question to Councilor Fox, to clarify his comment.
yes.
Councilor Fox, can you clarify or expand on your comment again, that what you thought was prudent?
That redirected, I mean, I thought the bid was 8,500. Now there's this ancillary Exhibit A. What could all that entail? I just see arbitration and stuff.
I would tend to want to approve an agreement with not to exceed an amount of $8,500. And then if there was some problem that was going to exceed that, we could do addendum to the contract.
So if you'd like to make a motion that the contract is not to exceed the $8,500, and then also direct city administrator and I to address this inconsistency, I think that would be appropriate. Or we bring it back in March.
Let's bring it back in March.
That puts us off a month on our recruitment. Over a month.
So we could
Question. Have we asked already about the little asterisk Exhibit A?
I think we just got this.
So
right
we got
before.
this at 3:30 this afternoon. And so Sammy reviewed it. She was, she pointed out to me that it's kind of inconsistent because it's pointing to Exhibit A, but that's not the proposal they gave us, but the proposal is included in the packet. And so I think what they just need to do is fix the language in number 3 to say per the proposal not to exceed 85.
we could approve that.
They
I'm
can
all
go
for
back and
that.
make the change and we'll sign it.
Ready to make a motion on that?
You're ready to make them. So any other questions? Okay. Not, I will entertain a motion.
Okay. Not to exceed an amount of $8,500. Between. LG.
Second. Sorry.
And then are you also allowing Ann and I to work with LCOG and LPGS to clarify that language and sign the contract?
I don't think that needs to be part of the proposal. I think motion is to approve the contract and then we present that contract to them and if they.
We have,
So you're changing, I'm sorry. So you're proposing that we change the contract. This is a signed contract from LCOG.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
city's direction will be to get a signature. So
Yeah.
you're
If,
requesting that we ask for changes to the contract and ask them to sign again. So that would be
Yes.
negotiated.
yes.
Yeah.
We have clear direction
Thank
on
you.
that. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion by Counselor Lehman and a second by Counselor Fox to accept the IGA with Lane Council of Governments for recruitment of city administrator with the change that it needs to be inclusive of the $8,500 and giving direction to city administrator and mayor to have the conversations and get a new contract signed by LCOG once that is clarified. Okay. All
Is that
those,
your motion?
that is- yes, thank you. All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? So that's, the outcome is 3-0 to move forward with the governmental agreement for recruitment.
who's the second?
That was Counselor Fox. Now we are on the administrative information reports. I believe we're anxious to hear from you, Brian, on the changes in or the update, I should say, in the building plans for your shop.
Yes.
Finally, we've been talking about this for years.
Yes, we have. To kind of give a little bit more context for the new council members. I wish Councilor Wells was here to kind of hear this too, but the Public Works Department right now currently doesn't really have a home. We have a home base and operations are ran out of one room at the wastewater treatment plant, and we have it's a small building and that we use for everything that we would do mechanic wise. So this operations center will allow for the growth that we're currently seeing in Public Works into the future. So we've sized buildings accordingly to accommodate for that growth to carry us on till Coburg can no longer grow. Right now, the estimated cost for operations center is roughly $1 million. And we've split that over 3 funds, the street, the water, and the sewer department. And it would be owned by sewer department. So the fire district came to us. We've been talking with them for a little over a year now about them adding funds to this build to have another similar shop size to the one we currently have, so they can store one of their fire trucks out there because they have grown past their capacity as well. So the fire district is going to put $90,000 towards this. So the city, we decided that spending some money on engineering and whatever the overage is on the build, that it's a win-win for the city and the fire district. The fire district would use that building until the time comes where they build a new fire station where they can house all of their equipment. So it's probably looking more towards the 7 years than the 5 years for that construction to happen for the new fire station. So after that time, the city would then be able to utilize that space as well. The new operations center is going to house everything Public Works. It'll have a training room, kind of similar to the council chambers, maybe a little bit smaller, not quite as big, but it'll be able to be utilized for all city activities, including the police department and the fire district as well. There'll be 2 offices located in the operations center, one for myself and one for the supervisor, and a locker room, and then multiple bays for storage of vehicles and a mechanics bay as well. You can kind of see on the map, if you're looking at the map over there on the left-hand side, you can see the proposed building, the main building, and then to the north of that would be the shop, or the secondary shop, I should say. Does anybody have any questions? I would love to answer.
So just kind of reviewing the evolution of this, originally it was 1 building and it changed to 2. Can you kind of comment?
Yeah, so when we started discussing things with the fire district had some excess money that they needed to spend. And what they were looking at was building somewhere a building very similar to the shop that's existing out at the wastewater treatment plant now. So we thought it would be a great partnership because they already have a little area out there kind of long-term leased from the city for a training area. It's a perfect fit. It's secure. And like I said, after their new fire station gets built, or after so many years, the Public Works Department would take that over and be able to utilize it.
So the main building is still the
Yep.
original.
Yep,
This
same
is
size.
just the second.
Yep.
So it wasn't taking the original plan. making it-
No.
Okay, so the second building is.
Ancillary.
specifically
Yep.
Because of the fire.
Yep.
Okay. So initially it was $900,000 in each of the 2 budget years. Now it's $1 million in each of the 2 budget years.
No, it's $1 million split over this fiscal year and next.
Okay, it was 900 over 2 years.
Yep.
Yes.
Now it's.
Yep.
1 million.
We'll review that at budget time.
Yes.
Yep. So currently we're working through some stormwater issues that we're gonna have to deal with. Once we build a shop, that area obviously will be a building. And that stormwater, the rainwater that would be coming down has to go somewhere. And so we have to account for that as well.
Rain barrels, they're great,
We can do that.
big ones.
Big swimming pool. Public Works is extremely excited about this. This is for up until now, the Coburg Public Works Department, from when the city became a city until now, obviously just didn't really have a home. Now, the old city hall, they had a shop. But once we moved out of the old city hall into the new city hall, everything got moved to the wastewater treatment plant. And everything is stored there, from Christmas decorations to surplus desks, to everything that we would need. And this is just going to, make everybody that works in public works feel like every other public works department around us. We have a home.
And this space will allow us to put equipment under cover.
Yep.
And not be exposed to the elements.
Yep, so most of the equipment now will be stored indoors. On the back side, so the east side of the building will have a large awning, a covered porch, if you will. That more equipment can be stowed under when the weather's bad.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost there. We just gotta get some, we gotta, dot the i's and cross the t's, but we're in the home stretch. We're at 90% plans. We're working through some electrical design complications. I don't foresee a problem with that. And like I said, the stormwater is kind of an issue. And then getting the high-speed internet out there to kind of house the new skater room in the operations center is going to be important. And we will have a backup power system that's the twin to what's here at City Hall. We'll be able to still utilize the skater room, outlets in the offices and in the bays for emergency backup power.
So the existing the building right now, what will that become?
It'll just be the wastewater
It'll
plant.
just be
Yep.
wastewater.
Yep.
Okay.
So that
All
that front office will more than likely all of the desks will be moved out except for one for the operator that operates the treatment plant.
Any other questions, for Mr. Harmon? Don't see any. Well, this is
Okay.
exciting. This is sort of a dream come true.
Yeah, this is I think that this is a well, for me anyway, this is putting Coburg finally putting the stamp on the Public Works Department feeling like an actual Public Works Department. We already do the work, but now we just need a house.
It's a growth process.
Yes, it
isn't
is. Yes, it is.
Discount under a homeless plan.
What was that?
Get discount under our homeless plan.
I'm not so sure if that would work very well in a secured area. I'm not sure that would, but we're all thinking about these things, and I certainly appreciate that. It's not an easy discussion for anybody. I don't think so. I think it was just information.
Council asked for this information at their
Right.
work session.
Because we were confused about two buildings rather than one, so.
A timeline for construction, I guess
Oh.
that might be important too.
Okay.
I think we're fairly close to finalizing everything. We think that we may be able to start the bid process in May or June and start construction early summer. So it may, in fact, some of those funds that we've dedicated for this year are probably going to have to roll over into the next fiscal year. But Ann and I are working through that process right now.
All right, so let's see, now I've taken everything apart, and that's never a good thing that I do. Okay, looks like we have a staff report from Ann Heath on the American Rescue Fund update.
Yeah, so this is just an update on funds that we received through the American Rescue Act. And specifically now there has been an updated direction on where those funds can be spent, and it's been expanded. So information within the report. The council did allocate the first part of the American Rescue Funds to be spent on certain projects, and the majority of those are being spent out in either last year's budget or this year's budget. So then we do have a new allocation of $130,000. They have expanded what you can use it for. And there's a report that I attached about that. But basically you can use it for streets. And my papers are out of the back-to-backs here are just really kind of sometimes, but
Save trees, but confuse counselors.
yeah, so anyway, it's okay. I can cover it. So there's an expansion. I think one of the biggest pieces whether or not we have a loss in revenues, and I will cover that under a different report tonight, because that is an important piece for this city, is if we have a loss in revenues, we need to replace them. And due to COVID, and I think that I can show you that I think we definitely have a loss in franchise fees. And so we need to do a little bit more follow-up on that. But you can use the new spending for lost wages, financial assistance for lost wages, food assistance, immediate needs for housing, emergency housing. You can also use it for transportation infrastructure and any community development block grant. Those are national objectives for benefiting persons of low and moderate incomes, eliminates slum and blight, meets the urgent needs, threatens whatever threatens public health and safety. So asking for council to allocate those funds tonight. I think I can make recommendations during budget time, but I did put a little bit of a recommendation here. Lost revenues, we definitely need to look at that. Supporting Main Streets, continuing to fund a coordinator salary. Main Streets will be coming to you in March to talk about their needs, so you can kind of hold that in your head. And safe route to schools connection, that is an option. An emergency fuel island at the new was unfunded when we applied for it, and more support for the food bank in funding a storage building. We did apply for some funding through the legislative project. We won't hear about that for a bit, I'm guessing.
And I know the food bank folks are sort of looking for grants too.
Yeah.
Those conversations. So if my figures are correct, and this is sort of, we have spent, I come up with $130,000. Well, yeah, 129,864. So that means we have what left? Is
130.
130 left.
Yeah.
Okay, so approximately half of it
Yeah.
is still to be allocated.
You only allocated the first year,
That's right.
so council can give that some thought. And obviously, if you want to talk about it tonight, you can do that. But that we could talk about where you would want to allocate those funds. If you allocate them towards lost revenues, then you just allocate them back to the general fund. or just general revenues
And
to
then
replace the
be
loss. And-
Sort of.
Yeah.
Plotted in wherever we felt the need was.
Right. It'd just be back to the general fund budget to replace what we would have had for revenues. I can answer any questions you might have about them.
Say what you said about the fuel tank.
Well, it says in here, it's part of it, that you. Just well, spending it on. Emergency relief from natural disasters. I would have to do more research on that to see if a fuel tank. Would be covered in that, but that is a possible use.
We currently have a fuel tank at the wastewater treatment. Don't we?
No, we applied for a grant, but we didn't receive it.
Just the generator, but is there 1,000-gallon fuel tank there?
There is, but it's not. We're
That's
kinda
right,
waiting-
we purchased
yeah,
an
we're
empty
kinda
tank.
waiting for the- We're kind of hoping that the funds that we would have received would have moved that tank and put it into place. By a fuel island there for public works.
So the fuel tank is functional, it's just not in use.
The tank is fine. Pump that's with it is not. It's a very good deal at state surplus, so we
And it needs to be elevated
No.
no. Oh, okay.
What would the size be of a second tank if we need one?
So what we would look at is probably another either a 500 or 1,000 gallon fuel tank for the vehicles that take people, the backhoe, dump truck, street sweeper.
This other one would be gasoline.
Yeah, gasoline, all of that.
I think it's good to have both.
Yeah.
And 1,000 rather than 5.
And then it would be on a monthly refill through provider, third party.
So we keep that stock rotating all the
Yeah,
time.
and then
which is important.
obviously there's accountability, so there would have to be some sort of accountability measures. So that was kind of a big cost in that too, is, doing some sort of. Like, so we can keep track of who is using.
Otherwise, Councilor Lyman, you're sure you'd be out there filling up your car.
Yeah. So the generator, is that able to backfeed to City Hall if necessary in an emergency or any other place, or is it just located?
No, the one that is located at the treatment plant now is strictly for treatment plant and build out of the treatment. That was sized to accommodate power usage for complete build out of the wastewater treatment.
We have a generator here though too.
We have a battery backup system that gets recharged. Batteries get recharged when the power grid is on. So they're fully charged, but when the power goes out, the batteries go down. We have a mobile generator that we bring in, hook up, and then charge the battery with that. So we'll be able to utilize that mobile device for the operations center and City Hall. And the water, the wells have a generator. The new third well will have a generator, and the food have a generator.
And their own fuel tanks then too.
That's correct, yeah.
Redundancy.
Yeah.
Important.
Let's have an emergency.
No, no.
You gotta use this stuff.
We've had enough emergencies for another couple of years, I think.
Counselor Hawk.
Oh, Counselor Fox?
Yes, is there a timeline that we have to spend the monies in? It's two-part question, and the other one is when we come back before budget, if we could have some numbers next to some of these ideas, that would be helpful.
So on page 122, the city has until 2026 to spend all funds.
Okay.
I believe that's that question. And then, Anne, you said you'd bring back
Yes,
information prior to budget.
prior to budget, I'll bring back information that last time it was done in a resolution to allocate funds, so I will bring back. Maybe
Excellent.
in April, I'll bring it back to council, the resolution.
So Counselor Fox, does that answer?
Yep,
April?
thank you.
Okay. The citizen inquiry quarterly report. Sammy, is that you?
Yeah, it is. I really don't have a staff report on it. This is at council's direction. It explains our policy on how the citizen inquiries are processed. They're tracked in administration at the front desk and then reported to you guys quarterly. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer.
You do have a report, a log on page 125. And looks like most of those are still sort of pending.
Pending and monitoring. So the noise ones are the ones that are just, they're being monitored. I mean, they're being reported to city council. There's nothing that we can do to close it. So just monitoring and keeping the file open at this point.
Most of those are just from the same source. Any questions? Oh, Counselor Lehman.
So just to put on the record here, because this was said at the work session, citizens can fill these out anonymously as well.
Yes, that is correct. So it makes it very difficult to follow up if an anonymous report is filed. Actually, pretty much impossible to follow up with that person.
Clarification that I thought that a person would sign it, but ask that it be anonymous in terms of, and is that not?
No, at this point, if it's filled out anonymously, it's still processed, but there's no name or any information attached to it. If we keep that, it's public record and that it's public information. So,
Just come through as
but they have the
anonymous.
option to put anonymous on it. It will go through the process. They can follow it through the process. But they will not get actual follow-up from Public Works Director, Police, City Administrator closing it.
Anything else? Okay, Police Department quarterly presentation. Chief, there you are.
Good evening,
Lost
everybody.
over there.
I was in a black uniform in the back too, but
Obviously, I'm rather colorblind.
so this is the fourth quarter report for 2022. Just to recap, the data is the stats are divided into 7 different categories. The first one is traffic stop person stops, patrol checks, business checks, person crimes, which would be a rape, an assault or harassment, runaway, suicidal subject, peace officer mental hold, and then property crime, so theft, stolen vehicle, forgery, criminal trespassing, anything to do with property. Number 5 is society crimes, so a DUI that gets called in, a reckless driver, disorderly conduct, somebody drunk, intoxicated at the park. Abandoned vehicle, city ordinances fall under category 5. Number 6 is warrant arrest and fugitive from justice arrest that we do. And then number 7 is everything else. So that would be citizen contact. We assist another agency, assist OSP on the freeway, assist the fire department, training, VIN inspections, all the other stuff that we do as far as calls for service. The second page divides it up per section with the total numbers. So traffic stops, person stops, we did 299 in the fourth quarter. Patrol checks, business checks, 137, 41 person crimes, 64 property crimes, 121 society crimes, warrant arrest 7, and then all other crimes were 6. The quarterly trends on the bottom, on the person stops, traffic stops, you can see in the third quarter was extremely high. Officers were super active. Part of that is due to we had the ODOT traffic safety grant, and so we were doing a lot of additional traffic enforcement. I think the day we did the pedestrian operation, I think we had like 24, 25 traffic stops that day. So that was kind of the input there. In the fourth quarter, you can see that it's down. Part of that's because at the end of the year, I needed to manage my time accruals. So in the last page, we took 260 hours of leave time because I needed to get some of those accruals down to a manageable number. So I think that had an impact. Going into the next quarter's report, we might be light a little bit on some activity as well on traffic enforcement because we're down an officer out for medical reasons. So those have a direct reflection. So currently down 1, so that means we're down 25% of a person. So it definitely has an impact, and you can see about some of the stats. Everything else seems to be semi-normal. I can't really control when we get a call for a theft or something like that. So they fluctuate a little bit, but those are your numbers as far as in a graph. Page 3 is kind of a list of some of the stuff that we do, that we did in that particular quarter. Patrol checks, had a sex abuse case, had a couple of suicides, a disabled vehicle, a stop sign that was down, truck inspections, training. You can see that there's a wide variety of calls that we go to. Currently, we've been working on a city ordinance issue on South Industrial Way on a motorhome that's been parked there for a couple months. So that's listed probably 2 quarters. We did have a rape that will probably be reflected in some time in the first quarter of this year. It was a rape 1, sodomy 1, assault, strangulation, tampering with a witness, and coercion. And kind of why I bring that up is those cases are intense officer investigation. So Officer Miller's working that case. The district attorney is going full bore on a prosecution. We've written a search warrant on a travel trailer, 3 or 4 search warrants on a phone. The victim started off in Coburg, Spokane, and now in Alabama. Suspect was in jail for the last month or so. It's a pretty good case, but it took we're probably into that well over 80 to 100 hours of investigation. Listen to multiple jail conversations on the phone, getting additional evidence. So those all impact what we do. We just don't have any control of those coming into the police department, but when they come in, we investigate them. On page 4, it's a pie graph showing some of the time. And you can see in the right-hand column for the activities on leave time, that's up 130 additional hours of leave that we took off to try to manage that part of the management of the police department. Also during December, it's always busy for us. We have the Shop of the Cop, community outreach, the Shop of the Cop. As you've seen earlier, we had the wrecked DUI car on a display for deterring intoxicated drivers. I hope it works. We arrested a guy 2 days after we put up the display, right in front of the display for DUI. So it doesn't work on everybody, but we try. Yeah, job security everywhere. And then I'll entertain any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions? Counselor Fox?
Did the wreck of the automobile happen in Coburg?
No, that car was from a DUI crash up Highway 58. That was actually the suspect driver's car, but it was a triple fatal. And he got sentenced to 8 years in prison. So whenever I do that, I'll try to get a car that was involved in a DUI crash because that's the real world. And Dow's Towing out of Oak Ridge actually brought that down for me.
Well, I know in public service, public department and the police come, you like to have questions, right?
Yes,
So
I
I
hope.
always have questions. Not asking for any more data collection or analysis, but on your calls for service, do you just have a sense, the proportion between Coburg citizens and non-citizens, travelers, in terms of the activity?
Yes. So today is a perfect example. We had a vehicle at the Shell that pulled up to a gas pump. He had to turn his car off to go pay for gas, came back out, couldn't start the car, couldn't move it. It ended up to be a stolen car out of Kaiser. So I responded to assist, found the suspect running away from the McDonald's, but he was out of Kaiser. We have a tremendous influence from outside of Coburg. We do have a couple houses that are kind of frequent flyers in town, over at Primero V Park, a couple residences here in town. So I think you're always going to have that when you have 1,200 people living together in a community. But we have a tremendous input from outside influences from all over the nation. You get 5,000 trucks a month coming to that truck stop from every state in the Union, Canada, Mexico. And then we arrest people. We had a guy in court, not today, but last month, and he had warrants out of Alaska. But we arrested him after about an hour negotiating with him because we didn't want to break his window, drag him out of the car. We were able to call his mom, who came in down from Halsey, who ended up talking to him, and we were able to talk him out of the car and into handcuffs. But tremendous input from outside of the city. But he had an outstanding warrant out of Alaska that was non-serviceable. We've arrested people from Germany, Australia, Sweden, Canada, and Mexico here in Coburg, which still amazes me. So we do have a tremendous influence from outside.
This kind of follows up with that a little bit. Again, not asking for you doing more data collection and everything, but I'm just curious about the amount of time your officers have actual physical contact with the perpetrator, use of a taser, weapons drawn, soon even being fired.
So I can get you the stat every time I've been here, I think as your chief 8 years. Since I became the chief, we do what we call a level of resistance form on every arrest and every citation in lieu of custody. So if we have somebody out of Lynn County, because they do this a lot, we end up giving them a citation on an outstanding warrant. We do a use of force report to document how often we don't use force. So I have all those stats. I don't have them off the top of my head, but we document all of that for use of force with a firearm, presence, just being in uniform, or if we have to physically do some kind of a control or a baton or a taser. A couple of months ago, I know that Public Works witness, but the guys, Officer Miller ended up using his taser on a subject that was from out of the area, having a mental health issue. He ended up having a knife in one hand and a sheetrocking hammer in the other hand. And he was outside of the McDonald's. We had them lock the doors so he couldn't get inside because he was menacing to people. Dan talked to him, got him to put down the hammer. He would not, however, put down the knife. So he ended up actually calling for cover and actually ended up tasing him before cover could get there and getting him in handcuffs. But I have all of that that I can put together, and I probably will just for a review. We like outside eyes looking in, but we've documented that stuff for years, and I can put those together for you.
That would be helpful, I mean, just for us to know, I think.
Kind of in the national news.
Yeah, and to address that, we've already had a department meeting to talk about what happened in Memphis, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as far as that goes. And then we have a training class this Thursday on defensive tactics, because we feel that there was probably some different approaches they could have done. And a good example is one of the officers were making a traffic stop. The guy kind of tried to elude, ended up by the coffee kiosk by Country Java. Rolled his window down about that far, wouldn't get out of the car, wouldn't give any identification. Well, by Oregon law, you have to carry and present a driver's license. So if we make a traffic stop, we ask for that, you have to give it to us, or we can forcibly force him out of the car. So I responded, another officer responded. We actually boxed him in. I parked my car bumper to bumper in front of his. No, my car, not the new one. Had the officer move his car up from behind, so we sandwiched him in. I have a little spike strip that I have in my door that I unfold, I put underneath his car tire. I told him he would, we had the spikes there because he was not free to leave. We didn't want to get some kind of a vehicle pursuit. 45 minutes later, we're talking to him. OSP came to help us. We just talked to him. He had a German Shepherd dog with him, which adds another element of concern. So we have catch poles in all the cars. So we had OSP canine with a catch pole. We had 3 of us there if we needed to get into a physical altercation with him. Ended up getting his mom's phone number, called his mom, I talked to her. They drove all the way down from Halsey. Like I said, we were able to talk him into handcuffs and, arrested him for the crime. And then we helped get him in touch with Veterans Administration for some assistance. But that's kind of, my officers are really good. It's nothing personal. We took our time. We didn't have to, but I think it was the right way to do it. So we didn't have any use of force whatsoever. So I appreciate the conversation because that's a good tactic and a good outcome.
I gotta ask these other ones. I do want to know how the new police cars come along, and do we have a policy on the chokeholds, and are we always using our body cameras?
We are using body cameras. We do have a policy on chokeholds. It's state law that we can't use a chokehold. And then the new car is striped. We've met with the fire department. They're going to assist in the install. We've ordered, I think, $4,000 worth of equipment, the back cage, front cage, and the console. I'm currently talking with the sheriff's department, the radio technician, to get a radio. And I'm hoping to have the radio installed next week. And once we get the console, and a lot of the lights were already pre-wired. So we're moving forward. It's slower than I want, but it's moving forward.
We'll be excited to see it, and I know you will be too.
The striping looks great. Turned out really well.
Clarification, do you want the reporting on the use of force to be in his next quarter report? Is that good for you, or you want to be prior to that?
If I can, what I would like to do is do an annual review of some, we do pursuit reviews, we do use of force. So I would like to put that maybe together as a package and do an annual review.
When do you think that would best fit?
Give me a moment to figure that out, how
I mean,
to
do you
pull all
sort of
those
do
pieces
that?
together.
So.
Yeah, it'd be good to do it at the end of the calendar year. So maybe I can do it next month or the next couple months and it'll capture 2022.
That sounds reasonable, right? Sounds reasonable to everybody? Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
all right, thank you.
By the way, we're very proud of our police force.
Oh, well, thank you.
We think you all do a great job. I can't speak for everybody, but I think you do a great job, and I really do appreciate the kindness and the compassion that you and your officers showed.
Well, I always say good police work is boring. So that's my motto. And if we're not in the news, that's a good day.
That is a good day, for sure.
I say the same thing for Super Bowl refs.
We were rooting for there. All right, we have a finance quarterly presentation by Ann Heath,
And I'm gonna do a PowerPoint for you.
and that is in our red folder, I believe.
Okay, sure. And that's fine. So there is a written report, which I am assuming that you've read. One clarification on it is on page 1 where it says whole city revenue received. One in there that doesn't belong. So we did not receive $14 million in the month of December. That should be 4.3. The one should not be there. I did not catch that in my review. I apologize.
Wishful thinking. Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, yes. So I'm going to move over to the PowerPoint because much of the reporting that is in the written report is on this PowerPoint and more. So I'll just start with the first slide, which is the revenues. So revenues versus actuals as of December 31st, the whole city is 37% of revenues. And keep in mind that down in the water fund, we have a huge reimbursement coming of over $500,000 on the water fund that we are just signing and turning in. So, and also sewer fund, that urban growth boundary transfer happens at the end of the year. So that's going to lag a little bit in revenues for sewer. So while we try to balance it over 12 months, the percentage thing is never quite on. General fund is at 51% and street fund is at 51%. So those are right on tracking as expected. In the expenses, the city is at 27% of expenses. So that's good. There's a buffer between revenues and expenses. General fund it's 35% and street fund at 37%. Water fund at 17%. Sewer fund at 23%. At 6 months into the year, those are good percentages. Slide shows revenues just where they're coming in. And what percentage of the total city revenues. And then the next slide is the same breakdown for expenses. For this general and street fund, for street fund, we had some big projects in the beginning of this year. Slide is our cash on hand. A little bit less than last year, but keep in mind that we are in cap. It's going to go up and down, but in general, we are right. We're tracking pretty well at December 31st for cash. So the next slide is something you're not going to normally see. This is some analysis I did. I did a 6-year analysis on revenues and tried to show you two different things. One is what happens with revenues when we have development growth. So if you see development fees there in 2018, 2019, you have some pretty substantial revenues. And then what happens with the growth of the city? So see an increase in taxes, and then we start seeing an increase in water fees and sewer fees. So those are direct correlations. The other one is the official COVID era. So what happened to revenues during COVID? And we definitely see a drop off in our franchise fees and in our franchise licenses. I have to research as to why that is, but I think that we can safely had an impact, and I'm sure that has to do with some of the manufacturing cutting shifts and not running at normally. And so that when I was talking about replacement of lost revenues, that might be an area that we can use the COVID funds. I joked with the staff that during people stopped smoking and started drinking. And so, and it seems like that kind of, they got over it. And so now we're seeing the liquor taxes go back. That first year of COVID, true COVID, it's like some pretty heavy. Tourism did not decrease. And part of that is that we also had an some fire where people were moving out of their homes and into our RV spaces. And during COVID, our spaces were full. And additionally, Premier RV doubled their size. And so I don't think we saw, in fact, we saw a growth in transient room tax. The other part is the county made sure that cities still got tourism funds. So, so we didn't see a loss in that. Fines and bails, we talked about this earlier, the council may not remember, but that we were behind in fines and bails, but when we were able to start holding court again, we caught up. And so there's a definite catch up there with the revenues for court. So I was hoping this would be helpful for you to just kind of see how are we tracking with revenues through COVID and progress with development in the city. Looking at some revenue comparisons in the 2 years between sewer and water for our major fees. And so sewer and water fees are pretty much tracking for the last 2 years. Street utility fees, you're seeing that that's because the tough was a full year of tough. And so we're seeing an increase in that. Street gas taxes, a little bit less. And this is something that the council will want to watch this and listen to the legislature and decisions being made at the legislation. So will they tax electric vehicles? Because if we're to encourage people to be buying electric vehicles, then they're not buying gas, and therefore we're losing gas revenues in state shared revenues. And this is a big concern. There's a lot of discussion around this. And there is this talk about how will they tax electric vehicles to make up that difference, because something has to happen so that we can continue to take care of our roads. So that is something that council will want to monitor. Property saw an increase in increase in values in Coburg. Coburg usually, if there is a downturn, we weather better because we retain our values. So that's just a comparison of 2 years. Personal services, I did provide you a comparison of personal services and then tried to correlate it with development impacts. So we're definitely seeing a growth in every department in personal service costs. We also see that as we grow, taking the frame of growth, services are increasing as we grow as a city. And so that demand is something that we really have to pay attention to of when do our police services, when public works and police can no longer keep up with the demand of the growth of the city. And I think right now we're okay, but I know public work is stretched. And police, we'll just have to keep looking. That's another thing that the council will need to keep monitoring is what is that point when we need to increase our services because we've grown. And so
when you say increase services, what you're also saying is increasing
personnel.
FTEs.
Yeah.
people.
The next graph is water fund and water expense. These graphs are really important, and you're going to hear more about this in March from FCS Group, who are going to come and do a presentation for you. But I just wanted to show you this because it's really important to track water revenues and expenses, because when you are collecting water fees, you're not just collecting them for today. You're collecting them for the future. So you're collecting them to pay future debt. You're collecting them to pay for future infrastructure. So when you look at revenue, exceed expenses. So when you're looking at 22, our expenses are exceeding our revenues, and that partially is we're in a capital project year, and so we're spending out some SDC reserves. But in 219, the same. Be a lot of discussion on this on 14th of March, but generally you're collecting more fees than you spend out because you're planning ahead and you're investing in an infrastructure. And the same in the next slide for the sewer fund. In 27 and 18, 27 and 2007. We collected, that was probably quite a bit of debt service then. So then we started. We did pretty well. We actually refinanced the loans, and we are now back collecting fees that exceed the expenses, and that's what we need to do, because we need to keep building that so we can consider the future of the sewer infrastructure. So those were just some extra slides that I wanted to put in for the city council to try to start training you on things that you need to be watching for, especially with new counselors. But with my leaving the city, that we want to make sure that you know what to keep an eye on. And so I'm hoping to educate you more on those trigger points, that just keep an eye on it, make sure that, like FCS Group, they should be once a year. They should be updating our platforms and then reporting to the council in about March of every year of where we at in a 20-year analysis. And Doug will be here in person, I believe, on March 14th. If you haven't met Doug before, he does a good job. And so he will share with the council his analysis and where we need to be with utility fees. Lemon.
I'm starting to see more and more places having their own security services. I was in Best Buy in Salem the other day, and noticed they actually had a security person armed at the door. Where we have so much activity at the truck stop and other places, has any conversation been with businesses about our police force may not be able with the current personnel to provide the level of service that you would expect or want? They ever stepped up and any conversation about hiring their own security?
I have not had any conversations regarding that with any of the businesses. No, I don't know that Coburg North, do they have a security of their own?
They do, but he's kind of handyman or more. They'll call us if they have about 40 years.
Or surveillance?
Yeah. We haven't had any of those conversations with businesses up to this point.
Do a lot of these businesses have their own surveillance cameras too?
Most of them know.
Any other questions? Counselor Fox, questions?
Nope, not right now.
Thank you, Ann. Administrative monthly report, staff report again by Ann Heath. Anything in here that we need to be paying attention to or that counselors had questions about as they review?
Call attention to the letter from Permit B, which is contained in the packet.
The very end of the packet. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it's on page 197. Because Paul Will is making a substantial request to the city. And I thought that he might be here tonight, but he didn't come. I don't know if he's on the.
He's not joining by Zoom. He may be watching on the live
Okay.
feed.
So I wanted to make sure that the council saw this letter and we because he is asking that the city extend the water line from the bore to his south property line at our cost. And that the city install the water which he would pay for. Working on sizing meter and has been talking with city staff. So city staff have been answering questions regarding that. That we keep him apprised of the state permit. The city has, we are on top of our filing of our permit. And it's just going to take a bit to get that moved through. Brian has some information on the costs of the city extending this. And so I'm gonna let him answer questions regarding what this means to the city. But I think that, I don't know if the council's prepared to talk about this tonight, or do you want to put it on your March agenda? But this is a substantial request of the city. And so I did want to call attention to that.
I would like to hear the estimated cost. I think we have to bring this back in March, probably for further discussion.
Yeah, so the estimated cost to take this across the property from the bore is about $180,000. Minus, I'm guessing somewhere around $3,000. So, yeah, you're still, yeah,
So
you're
still
still, yeah,
3,000.
you're still up there. Now, keep in mind, our engineer, when we do estimates, we estimate high, very high. And that is with a 20% contingency. So, you know, roughly $25,000.
I thought that we had already said no to this when it first came up.
I don't recollect if there was a yes or no. I think that Paul came and gave a heartfelt plea, if you will.
Previous to that.
We listen.
Yeah.
Well, at one point, we had some conversation, maybe it's not as specific, but I thought it was, we were barred legally from that, paying for that expense. There was pushback to him when he first brought this up, and we said it would not be legal for us to do that.
Within our ordinance, I think the staff needs to bring back a staff report to the council regarding this, but within our ordinance, there are requirements of people who wish to hook up to the city and what their responsibilities are. And so normally a property owner is responsible for hooking up to the system and paying the costs of that. Mr. Williams feels that he was promised water long ago. He's put in substantial investment to both bring the city into the, or to bring his property into the city limits, as well as into the wells that he's had to invest in over the years, because the water was not available to his property. So he has, my message to Mr. Williams was, if you have a request to the council, then you need to send him a letter and tell them what you want and make it clear to them what you're asking for. So that is what he's done.
So he would be asking us to do something that is counter to what our practice has been, and what our ordinance is calling for.
Yeah, so
Yes.
typically what would end up happening with any type of development, the developer of a property, it's to and through, right? So let's say there's 3 properties or multiple properties. The first property would build to city standard. So whatever that standard is, our standard is an 8-inch main line. We talked about this last month with the engineer about, anything over, anything that we would require over that minimum of 8 inches, we would have to credit them back with an SDC credit of some sort. But you go through your property to the next one, right? So he would have to, if this was a normal circumstance, he would have to bring that main line to the other side of his property line. He would be able to hook up to that line, but he has to make it available to the next development. And then that developer would take it across his property line to be able to service the next development. So those lines are getting extended at the developer's expense or the property owner's expense, if that makes sense.
So I would suggest that we get further information on this and that we get a staff report on it in March. I don't think this is something that we can really delve into in depth tonight. And I think we need some more back history and yes.
I would agree with that. And I would just like to say that Alan Wells last time asked Mr. Williams to bring back the documentation that he may have had, because Mr. Wells, Councilor Wells, said it's one thing to say that it was promises, it's another thing to say that there was actual
Obligation.
language that was communicated. So for $180,000, I'd like to have that part of your staff report.
Oh, Counselor Fox, you have a question? or comment?
Yes. Couple things. One, if my memory serves, at the last meeting, Mr. Williams said that it was like there was no contract that he can remember. It was more or less good faith discussion and maybe some emails, if you can find the emails. So that's my memory of that. The question I have is, just curious, he put it all in paper, but why does he want it at the south end, and what's wrong with where it is right now that he can hook up to?
It's not there right now. He would have to bring it from the bore to either his south end or wait for the development of the annex property to bring it to his middle property. The problem with that is Premier RV has some real concerns about their wells going into another summer with some wells, and they are urgent to hook up to the water and not wanting to wait in the event that the developer, it doesn't happen for another year with the developer. So
Right.
that is their predicament right now.
Board does come to the south end or
Yeah,
It's at the south.
yes, it is within 400 feet of the property line.
Okay.
So on the estimate, it's, 12-inch ductile iron, which I'm not sure why it's ductile iron, but that's a question for the engineer. It's 370 linear feet from the bore.
And that's the 180,000?
Yeah, well, there's some, obviously, there's some fittings, there are some stormwater management, or there's just a lot that goes into getting the line from one spot to the next in that area.
It isn't just ditching and
No.
putting in a pipe.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff
Yep.
that goes along.
I
with it.
believe
Yep.
there's a creek crossing, isn't there?
Well, the creek crossing will come later,
Okay.
but yes, there will be a creek crossing at some point.
So we need more information so we can
Yes.
discuss this. And again, I think March is probably our best idea on that.
I will say that we probably should either come up with an answer in March, because we would be getting in that area where things would have to be designed and put out to bid. If the city was going to do this, we have to, put all of our everything to paper and then put it out to bid. So with a decision in March, you're looking at June, maybe July before we could actually do that project.
Fitting into some-
Yep. And then I think that kind of falls in line with waiting for the wetlands permits as well. So nothing can be done until we get those
Right.
permits back.
So we're
Yep.
still waiting for those. Those should be coming.
So we have put into the DEQ website what we were requested to do, then we have a 30-day wait. And then we can put in all of the information. So there's a 30-day review. We've done everything we need to do. And I think it's March 4th when we can feed more documentation in, and we are
We may
prepared
have
to do that.
some information back from them
Yeah.
too by our next meeting.
Right. I don't know if we will from the state.
We
It's
may.
hard to
have
say,
something.
but,
Yeah,
so anyway.
okay.
We've been given the permission to feed in, but you have to go through this 30-day period first.
Lots to consider.
Mayor Bell,
Yes.
can I just mention that I think, just to clarify, it would be just helpful when, I'm sure the staff is going to do this, but can you just, when you bring that staff report back, I'd like to know what the city's legal obligations are with regard to this. And then if we're being asked to do something that we're not legally obligated to do, I would need to know why.
Here.
Absolutely.
Second that.
I don't know the background on this particular
There's a lot
issue,
of,
so.
there's a lot of background on this issue, and that's why I'm reluctant to start information tonight, because I do really think that I need to consult with legal even about some of the language and some of the documents that I have. So,
I believe in here and where are you in your process report?
So let's see, I can just continue. So the Macy Street, design, we put it out there, and that reporting is in this packet, and I'm gonna give you the page.
192, I believe.
Yes, 192. And let's see, 192 is the park. Feedback for the park.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
So 194 is the streets. It was, it's kind of an even Steven as to what designs people like and don't like. Some people don't want anything. They don't want us to touch the street. Others like the idea of sidewalks. They like the idea of speed cushions. So it's just, it's hard. Yeah, I think that I forward this to Brian and the engineers. And so council can give direction on where do you want do you want the public works and the engineers to look at this and decide that this is what the public kind of asked for through their input. It was a little bit of a disappointing turnout because there was turnout when the Macy Street thing came up. And so we did give the public opportunity. Everyone that lives in that whole vicinity received a letter in the mail telling them that they could come in and give input. It was on social media. It was, you know, it was put out there that people could come in and give their input. They could do it online. They could drop it off. They could they could go on online survey. And so we have what we have from the citizen input. And so I guess that is another piece of council direction as to whether or not you want to allow the public works director to work with engineering to look at these and then design a final design of the street. Again, if we're looking through to this summer, then engineering and stuff takes time, and getting out take time. So it's not something that we want to drag our feet on. But so I guess that's a council direction that you can give to the director tonight, is what do you want him to do with this information and how do we move forward with the design of the street? This is my personal opinion based on information that came before council previously when we were talking about this. And what I heard those citizens say was they were concerned about speed. They were concerned about safety for pedestrians, bikers, and children. So there seemed to be, from the input that we got verbally at council, a strong support to implement safety measures as we move forward with this street. So I too am disappointed. Want to hold up the whole project. And I think we need to have engineering sort of move forward, looking at what is the safest design for these streets.
I will say that we had more people come in that actually filled out a form. There was a lot of people that came in and had questions, viewed the poster boards that we had. And it was kind of shocking at the end when, I mean, it was only a handful of people and it's pretty much split, you know, right down the middle.
Do nothing, do it all.
Right. So, you know, I think that my answer to people when we finally come up with a design, when they say, why didn't you listen to what I said? Will be, we did. We listened to everything that was said and we had to make a decision. I mean, you know, it is not our fault that people didn't show up and actually, you know, give more input.
Did you get verbal information from people that you thought you'd fill out?
Yeah, I think the people that live in the localized area, so the ones that would have the most impact around that intersection between Macy, North Harrison, and North Willamette, they gave their input. A lot of it was very supportive of sidewalks. Some of the people that live there don't want anything done because obviously it impacts them the most, right? We have to do something. So doing nothing is not the answer. We can't just do nothing. We have to do something. So moving forward, and what I vocalized to people that came in was, I'm not in support of speed cushions. But if that was what people wanted, we were gonna do speed cushions, not on one street, but both streets, so North Harrison and Macy. That way we weren't channelizing folks to go around a speed cushion, right? Speed cushion placement is gonna be very important. So the poster boards were very preliminary. They were not anywhere close to a final design. So the placement of the speed cushions are gonna be very important because my fear is people will just drive around them. So now we have people driving into the shoulder to avoid a speed cushion, which they will. Because there's no barrier, there's no curb and gutter that would prevent that, right? So putting those in places where the parking areas would be, because we have to install parking, just like we would do in a new subdivision, right? So there'll be parking areas where people can park. So maybe placing those speed cushions in those areas to where there's a car parked there, they won't be able to go around the speed cushion. They'll actually have to use it. So that's my take on it. I'm not a big fan of speed cushions because I will tell you that it will only take a handful of landscape trucks, service type trucks, UPS, public works. The first time somebody goes over one and the equipment in the back of that truck makes a loud bang, you're going to hear about it. And typically that is what cities see, and that's what causes a removal of those speed bumps, speed humps, and speed cushions.
So can speed cushions be installed after the fact?
They can,
if
absolutely.
that Came up?
Yep.
Okay.
They can. It's best to do it while you're constructing or doing the improvements. Coming back after, we have to cut asphalt and then, but it can be done,
Can't
yes.
just put a cushion down
No.
and screw it in
Yeah.
place.
No, that would be a speed bump and we don't want to do that. So,
Another option, and I forgive me, I can't pull up the pictures, but another option for kind of slowing traffic down instead of speed is having some kind of a planter or
Mhm.
something that kind of extends a little bit into that where you might have some parking. And so it kind of narrows the street down a little bit and visually.
Yep.
Evidently, studies have shown that people will slow down when there's something on either side of the street. It slows people down.
that's
So
a
I don't
that's a
know if
great
that's
point.
part of
Those
the
are called traffic calming. So a speed
traffic calming.
cushion is not traffic calming. It's more of control, right? So traffic calming is bulb outs or islands. We don't have a whole lot of room in that area for islands, but maybe the bulb outs would be something we could look at. Again, we have no curb and gutter out there, so trying to construct a bulb out with no curb and gutter, it might be difficult, but I think it can be done.
Well, we could use some of those, watering troughs.
Yes, you
the
could.
metal
Absolutely.
ones, and plant, there'd be more projects for our park and tree.
Yep,
committee.
that's a great,
Yeah.
if you do a Google search of images of traffic calming with those parameters, you're probably going to see planters, large planters that come kind of project out into the street. It does narrow things down, and it has proven to be a good traffic calming device.
So there are alternatives
Yep.
that we could look at for traffic calming after the fact of the
Yep.
construction.
Yep.
Dr. Lehman.
So speed cushions is kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
a cushion isn't that soft or hard. Kind of my thoughts on the community input is it brings to your awareness some thoughts that might not have been considered, but it's not a vote.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
streets are for all residents, not just the adjacent neighbors. So
Exactly.
you have to construct the street, what's in the best interest of the city.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. You're absolutely right. We have to look at the good of the order.
And I think safety is absolutely
Yep.
paramount.
So, you know, when we were discussing the safe routes to school, obviously, you know, if you were to say, Brian, what would you do? What are you going to direct the engineer to do? It would be sidewalks on the north side of Macy, all the way through North Willamette to Van Dyne to tie into the sidewalk system there. And speed cushions on Harrison and Macy. That's what I would probably do. Now, that might end up biting me right in the rear end because, you know, once you put a speed cushion in on one street, you're gonna see citizen inquiry after citizen inquiry. Why isn't it on mine? And so we would definitely have to start evaluating where these would be placed and why.
And particularly on entrances and exits to our newest developments. I think that would be our biggest.
You know, it will take time for new residents moving into Coburg to get used to the local streets that we have, right? So I think what you're going to see is it wouldn't take long for somebody moving into the new subdivision to go, I might be going a little too fast coming in and out of here, right? So there is a transition, you know, if they're moving from Eugene where the streets are wide and the speed limits are 25 miles an hour and there's curb and gutter and sidewalks, that's a different feel than it is in Coburg, right? So you do have to kind of adjust your driving habits. I think that's a good way to put it, right, Larry? Yes. So there's an adjustment, right? So we have to kind of educate people, and maybe that's one of the things that we do is, you know, through the newsletter or, you know, social media is, you know, look out for each other, right? Slow down. It's not, you're not the most important person on the planet, so just slow down, right?
We'll walk around the signs.
I could, if you wanted me to, I will.
Did I hear you say traffic fines are an educational tool?
Yes, they are. Talk to the chief.
So, Brian, one last question. I promise I'll stop. Is there been any suggestions where Van Dyne comes out onto Willamette? Of blocking that or putting bullards or something on that entrance exit?
Are you talking about coming? So if you're coming down, if you're going down north on Willamette and then turning right onto Van Dyne towards
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Not really. A street that has been two-way for the life of the city and making it one way. There's a lot that goes into that. It's not just as simple as saying you can no longer go down this street. You know, we have to prove why, right? There's reasons why. And then when you do that, you're forcing traffic to a different area,
Yes,
right?
and I understand that, but I know that you've got that almost blind turn.
Mhm.
Then you've got Macy coming out, or Willamette, North Willamette coming out. Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And then you have a three-way
Yep.
thing going on.
So one of the things that we can do with our partners, Lane County, because that is their
Right.
intersection,
Yes, yes.
is when there was some discussion at the transportation meeting the other day. What do you do there, right? Because it would be a dangerous left-hand turn off of Van Dyne onto North Willamette. One of the things that I thought about since then is maybe talking to Lane County and making that a no left turn,
Okay.
right? So you would either have to go straight through the intersection or turn right and go down Locust and then come back around
Yeah.
on Harrison to get around there. That is definitely something that we can talk to Lane County about doing, is maybe it's a right turn only, right?
Okay.
So when you're going down Van Dyne, you have to make a right-hand turn on Willamette, and then you have to go to Locust and then back around, right? And that's just training people over time, right? This goes back to that, you know, corrective behavior, driving behavior, you know, when you're taking seconds off of people's travel time, they get irritated and they seem to speed up to go where they want to go, right? So if we do something like that, this is cause and effect, right? So if you say you can't go straight and it's going to take you 20 seconds longer to get to your house, well, people are going to speed up to bring that 20 seconds back into their life, right? And that's what we're going to try and have to correct.
Okay, so we'll bring that back to
Yep.
the transportation committee and take a look at from there. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
So the council needs, what is your direction to Brian?
Ryan described what he would do is what I would support.
So to be clear, you're giving direction for Brian to work with the engineers for a final design of the streets.
That would be
There you go,
Counselor
Brian.
Fox. Are you? in agreement?
Including the traffic calming. I like that part of the discussion. Sounds much better than speed bumps, or whatever you want to call them.
Knowing that some of those may come after the construction, but I don't think we want to hold up construction, so working with the engineer.
The way that Daisy in North Harrison is going to play out, we have some water line construction that we have to do, right? So we have plenty of time to bring the design back to city council. So we'll get to probably 60% design and bring it to council. For you guys. I don't know, I don't have time.
Yes.
Well, 60% usually gets you to a spot to where you can make corrections. Right, so when we get to 90%, that's usually the time where that past that process.
Pretty locked in by 90%, but at 60%, we still have some adjustments that can be made.
And to your point about having these speed bumps or calming after pavement, I know over in Central Oregon, there are areas that they're actually a material put down on top of it and painted yellow or white. And I don't know if those would be considered speed bumps or cushions.
Yeah, typically the ones that are mounted after are bumps or humps. Yeah, we're looking at the elongated speed cushions where it's more of like a ring, right? With emergency access through the center of the cushion for emergency.
So it's actually, they're actually built into the paving of that surface. Okay. So in your, I'm not sure if it got into the red folder or if it
is.
was just on your, so this, Andy, you want to speak to
Yeah.
this?
So there's a timeline in my report for moving forward with the discussion on the utility fees. So this brochure, this is a very, very early draft of the brochure. Council can take a look at it. If you have any suggestions for it, I would ask that you send them to me by next Wednesday or so. Send it to my email. I will be out of town, but I will be working on this to finalize it by next Friday. And the reason why I want to do it by next Friday is because it can get into the newsletter that's going to go out to the public. In addition, it would be mailed to every household in business in the city by mail with a sticker on the front that says information regarding your utility fees. So I really do want to get the word we discussed. Like I said before, FCS will be here on March 14th to present the models. And then there will be a public hearing and public comment taken on March 14th. And again on April 11th with a council decision, if you wish, on April 11th. If you decided you were not ready to make a decision, time. You can run it to May and still get it into the budget and still will be tight, but we can still make it happen. So we're trying to build you in time to make your decision. And be implemented into the budget and then the new fee starting July 1st. So like I said, keep in mind, this isn't done. It's a very rough start on it, but I think the information that would be contained in this is clearly defined. So it's just not all populated yet. So that I can answer any questions about you have about that and anything else. I think the rest of this is information that you can ask questions about in my report. Questions?
I was gonna say this then afterwards, but I can just do it now. I do disagree with what Councilor Blaine said, that he didn't think our residents understood COLA. I think people really do, and I would like to see just a statement in there to our citizens. As you know, COLA has been whatever, 7.9% or 8.
Actually, the CPI or inflation.
CPI inflation factor.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and as a result, we're not immune to that too, as a city. And I think a statement like that is appropriate in that brochure.
So we'll send those comments to you and
Yeah.
to your email.
Yeah, send them to my
You
email.
wanted those by what?
Wednesday, if next Wednesday, if you
Okay.
can take a time to look at the brochure, any ideas that you have for adding or correcting, or if it's not making sense. I will populate a timeline into the brochure, and we're also gonna populate low-income assistance into the brochure. So any other ideas that you have, please just feel free to send it to me by
That'll be
email.
by the 22nd of February.
Right.
We
And
will
then
get
we'll
that
finalize it and hopefully get it out with plenty of time for people to read it and be able to plan to attend the March 14th meeting if they'd like.
Should be a lively meeting, I would think. Maybe not. Okay, I would think. Okay, anything else? Any counselor comments? Counselor Lehman,
I would like to put on the upcoming agenda at some point in time, the discussion we have about the stipend for the mayor. It's discussed to be around $300 a month. And then the only other comment with Eugene banning new construction using natural gas. Had some people comment, does this potentially have a economic growth in Coburg in terms of new businesses, either reaching out to Springfield or other adjacent communities that aren't banning natural gas in new construction? Maybe it's something to think about. Words.
talk about. Oh, Counselor Fox, you have a question, or are you just holding your head?
I appreciate the recognition. I'm gonna work on doing dances or anything. I wanted to say this earlier, but I think it's really cool, just as a point, that on the Heritage Committee, I was reading through this thing and I'm like, why does this guy in Depot Bay want to be on our Heritage Committee? But he's a great grandson of Jacob Spore, so I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And also, but not for the reason, but I'm glad I was on Zoom because you know, this is being recorded, and I think our positions to the microphones should be checked from time to time, because some of the commentary gets lost, and I think of this as getting your steps in. But if questions go to people who have presented and they're sitting back, they should come up to the microphone again, because that sounds like the teacher in Peanuts. You can't hear anything.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Counselor Engelbrechtson? No?
No, and just thanks to the staff and for sticking around and presenting and all the hard work you do.
It is Valentine's Day. Have some more chocolate, and you'll feel much better. Well, take her some too. All right. right, unless there's anything else, I will adjourn